The Earle L. Corps Award is one of the highest distinguished awards that we give out each year, and that's someone that's really demonstrated a great need of giving back to the community and service above self, almost like the Rotary has. But Tim Saab is that individual. He always gave back to the community. There wasn't a day that went by that he didn't give back to somebody else, to help somebody else.
Well, I've been in Morgantown 34 years, and I've seen most of the Earle Corps award recipients receive those awards. And I can't think of anyone that's more deserving than Tim Saab. Geez, how many boards did he serve on? How many committees? So his fingerprints are all over this town, and I can't think of anyone more deserving of this than Tim Saab. And I know he's smiling down right now as we're all sitting in this room.
You know, Tim had a public face from the banking, and quite honestly, I always looked at him as the face of Central Bank. When you went in the lobby, he was always there to greet you and made sure that what you came in for, you left with. But there was so much more to Tim as a person, as a father, as a husband, as a community member, and the things he did throughout the community, whether it was United Way, whether it was his church, whether it was the Morgantown High facility, and a number of other projects that he dove into with all of his heart and passion every single day to truly make Morgantown a much better community.
The interesting thing about the Morgantown community and its relationship with Tim is that it was very personal. Everyone that you speak with had a personal relationship with Tim Saab. He made a difference in their lives, and truly there's no greater gift that we can give someone than to help them or make them feel better about themselves. Tim Saab did that with everyone that he knew.
If you had to look for someone in this community to have your kids look at as a role model for a family man, Tim Saab would be that person.
Tim wasn't a bragger, but you could tell when you asked him about his children, you know, he glowed. You know, he would talk about their accomplishments and what they were doing. Tim was definitely a family man. You know, he was just a good all-around guy.
He was very committed to his projects, committed to his family, committed to his social and charitable life.
Tim is one of the nicest individuals that anyone has ever met. Again, he was always willing to help somebody else, always had that smile, was a phenomenal cook, but he had so many talents, and he brought everybody up.
Everyone has good intentions, but Tim was one of the few whose actions always backed up his intentions. If Tim said he was going to do it, I knew he was going to do it.
There was no one like Tim that could bring everyone together and look at both sides of the story, to bring both sides together. And I can't tell you how many times he did that.
So Tim was a family man, a community man, and he was a true Catholic believer. He really took his faith seriously. So he was a man of faith and a servant. That's what I preached about at his funeral. I said he was a servant. And one of the things I shared was the night of before his funeral mass, I got called out to the hospital. All I can think of when I was up there was being with Tim's family the night he had his heart attack, and it just, my heart was still heavy and sad. It was only a couple days after his death. So I came back down from the hospital and I thought, I think I'll unplug the phone because I don't want to get called out again to the hospital to go up to Ruby. And I thought, no, what would Tim do? No, Tim was a servant. He would have kept the phone plugged in. Sure enough, I fell off to sleep, and an hour later the phone rang again, and there was another emergency at the hospital. And I lumbered out of bed, and I was kind of griping, and I thought, no, Tim was a servant. I'm just going to go up and do my work. And I shared that with the people at Mass the next day, that he inspired me as a servant to just keep going, keep pushing, and to be a servant for others. He was a man for others.
A few weeks after his passing, I heard a story that really gets to the core of what Tim was about as a person. Elderly gentleman here in town. His wife had passed away. His wife had done all the household finances. And this gentleman was at a loss to do the regular household financial chores, if you will. Tim found out. Tim went, and as I understand it, spent at least an evening every week writing checks, reconciling the checkbook, and making sure that his friend's financial household was in order, far and above what anyone could expect from a friend. But Tim did that, and I think that exemplifies what Tim did in any walk of life, and that's always going above and beyond.
4 nights before Tim's passing, he came up to my home to deliver a package of steaks that the bank delivered to directors and other customers. And he came in, and I said, well, Tim, I'm not going to eat these by myself. I'd really like to have you here. And I said, let's call Rich Hillary. And Rich came over. And we spent that evening, Tim making his famous Saab salad and making pasta. He was really proud because that very day he had paid off his mortgage. And we kidded him about it because of how long he procrastinated doing that, making that decision, but he took his time with everything. But anyway, Joy was texting him, and he said, well, Doug, I better go. And we walked out on the front porch to say goodnight, and he said, I love you, brother. And I said, Timmy, I love you too, brother. And we hugged. And that was our last day together, 4 or 5 hours on the back porch, covering just about our entire lives together.
Everything about Tim Saab was good.
Very few days have gone by that I haven't thought of Tim.
He was one of the most caring individuals I've ever been around.
I do miss him. I miss him a lot, yeah. But not as much as his family and his wife. But yeah, I miss him as a good friend and confidant and advisor.
I hope we, or I, told him frequently enough and sincerely enough how much he did for the organization and how much his effort and his sincerity and kindness and all that he did meant to the organization. You know, you start questioning yourself and you think, gosh, I hope we said it enough.
He struck balance. Many of us strive to achieve that. Tim achieved it on a daily basis. He was a whole man. He was a full man. And that's why he had peace.
There was nothing too small for Tim to take the time to try to help someone with. He was the leader within the bank with our employees. When they had an issue or a problem to solve, Tim was always the first one that they would go to. If it was a customer, if it was a shareholder, you know, again, no matter how big of a relationship or a capital campaign Tim was leading or a committee that he was serving on, he would always take the time to sit down with anyone. But we would kid him about how much time he was taking with something, and he'd look at us and he'd say, it'll come back to us. It'll come back in time. And you know, as the town poured out to pay their last respects to Tim and his family, I couldn't help but think, as I stood in line one night in the cold for 2.5 hours to get in, I couldn't help but think what Tim said to us almost daily at the bank. It'll come back to us. And it certainly did.